A man who knows war is our next guest. We are pleased to welcome in via telephone from Chicago, General Paul Vallely. He currently serves as chairman for Stand Up America. General, as always, we appreciate your time. Welcome back to America's Forum.
Thank you, J.D.
Well, there are two different folks we can deal with here. Let's deal first with the Pope. His pronouncement over the weekend that he fears we're basically seeing the start of World War III. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think we've been in World War III for quite a while, if we want to call it that. It's a new war, that's for sure. And it is a global war, as has been laid out by the Muslim Brotherhood, by Al-Qaeda, by al-Nusra, by ISIS. They're on the track for a global caliphate, and that's Muslim domination of the world. So they lay it out there. There's no mincing of words. As we mince words, it seems, just like the latest press conference that you just played. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And, of course, they know that we try to do all the delaying movements to do nothing, the sanctions. We try to put together these coalitions, which takes forever. In the interim, they gain more ground and gain more influence in what they're attempting to do.
Paul, obviously, we appreciate all your appearances here on America's Forum. Another one of our regulars who likewise has been in a command role in our military, General Mike Hayden, made the rounds on the Sunday shows yesterday, and Mike Hayden made this prediction of what the future might hold.
Right. Well, right now, I mean, Dennis admitted we've got about 1,400 personnel in Iraq, I mean, armored, wearing boots, on the ground. And the line is going up. We plus that up by about 500 over the past week. It's my estimation, John, that by the time all the dust settles for the roles that these forces have to play, and I'm not talking about American combat maneuver units here, but in terms of intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, logistics, advice, command and control assistance, tactical air control parties. Look, I'm betting we're up close to 5,000 by the end of the year.
5,000 troops, a lot different from the White House telling us no boots on the ground. Paul, you think back to Afghanistan after 9/11, that's what, over a decade ago now. Did we have a footprint as big as 5,000 in terms of the folks we put on the ground in those early days who had such success with air power?
In the early days, we had over 100 paramilitary special ops teams that were on the ground with very great support from air power, Air Force as well as Navy, and we basically routed them on the ground in 34 days. We flushed out Al-Qaeda and Taliban. The problem is, JD, as I've said before, we have conventional minds trying to run this strategy against unconventional warfare. And until we can get the unconventional warfare guys in charge, you know, by bringing back General Jerry Boykin, for example, who could run this war and come to a strategy that will ensure victory. But we can't have these conventional generals and admirals running this war anymore, and the conventional thinkers in the White House. We're just continuing down a path of failure.
General, you were a warrior, but your days now as a public policy advocate calls you also to be a diplomat. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you say, I believe the term was traditional thinkers, traditional generals, conventional generals, is that a watchword for political military leadership, military perhaps in sync politically with the president and his aims?
Well, not necessarily. We've been fighting this battle for several decades now about refighting the conventional wars like we did in World War II and in Korea, and then we attempted to fight a conventional war with some unconventional tactics in Vietnam. But certainly the guidance, the teaching that you get at the academies, at the war colleges, are more about fighting conventional wars with just a little bit of unconventional warfare training and understanding. And I'll go back to a few men on the ground with air power can decimate forces very, very quickly. And so that's why this word or phrase, boots on the ground, really doesn't mean much anymore. It doesn't mean anything to me. But what means a lot is the type of people we have involved in these Joint Strike Force operations to destroy the enemy inside Syria and inside Iraq.
Paul, Senator Lindsey Graham also made the rounds on the Sunday shows yesterday. He had a strong reaction to the president's plan for defeating ISIS. Here is Senator Graham yesterday, courtesy of Fox News Sunday.
There is no way in hell you can form an army on the ground to go into Syria to destroy ISIL without a substantial American component. And to destroy ISIL, you have to kill or capture their leaders, take the territory they hold back, cut off their financing, and destroy their capability to regenerate.
Paul, you agree with Lindsey?
Well, no, I don't. Again, you go back, if you're going to go fight on the ground, anywhere in the Middle East, you have to use proxies. Colonel Riyad, who formed the Free Syrian Army, lost his leg 2 years ago right after I was over there. His main goal is to bring down Assad. That's why he's not standing up and joining any kind of coalition against ISIS. But if you're going to fight on the ground, use the Kurds, use the Free Syrian Army. They're standing by. They're ready. And again, McCain was over there, met with some of the people that I know over there, General Idris, who formed the Free Syrian National Council. But again, we're not going after the main opponents of not only Al-Qaeda, but of radical Islam, and that's the Free Syrian Army. But many of them now have been forced to co-op and protect themselves.
Paul, a couple of minutes remain. The president has authorized U.S. troops not to Iraq or Syria, but rather to West Africa to battle Ebola. Is that the right use of our military?
Well, no, it's not. Absolutely, it's not. Again, we've got to have our military not involved in nation building and those kinds of things, other than probably, if you have a real calamity like a hurricane or a typhoon where we can use our air and medical forces. But for the most part, we need to be fighting the true enemy out there. And the true enemy, as you know, even on our southern border, is growing and growing. But what are we doing about that? So we just don't seem to have a cogent strategy or people that have a vision and have a strategy about what America needs to do today and tomorrow. And this is very frustrating to a lot of us retired generals.
Paul, a couple of reports this week sound hauntingly familiar. There was one report that our current president, as commander-in-chief, was personally reviewing the targets for airstrikes with the use of air power. That sounds hauntingly like LBJ and the way we fought in Vietnam. With a minute left, when you hear that, does that add to your concerns?
Oh, I just cringe, because I can remember being involved in Vietnam on ground operations with the 101st Airborne back in 65 and 66, where the Air Force guys out of Thompson Newton Benoit were telling me, he said they're making a decision about our bombing hitting tertiary bamboo bridges rather than going after the number one targets. And he said the guy responsible for that was McNamara. And so here we have the history repeating ourselves again, and an inability to learn and adjust to the future and have the generals and admirals and national security types that really understand the realities of the world and can deal with them out of the box.
We'll have to leave it right there. Major General Paul Vallely, U.S. Army retired. We thank you very much for your insights phoning in today from Chicago. So you heard what the general had to say. A president picking bombing targets? Why don't you tweet me your comments at Newsmax TV?